In the course of our midweek Lenten services this year, we shall call to the stand some witnesses who will share with us their experiences with the man on trial and their feelings about him. On the basis of their testimony, the prosecuting attorney will show why he thinks Jesus should be put to death. He represents a vast majority of people, which is reason enough why we must take his arguments seriously. The defense attorney will speak on behalf of Jesus and the church. But the verdict, shall you let him live or get rid of him, is up to you. It is a retrial, a new trial, a crucial trial that will go on in your hearts. The first witness to be called to the stand is Peter, the prince of the apostles. The prosecuting attorney will try to show that Peter's cowardice and denials of Jesus reflect on the integrity of the church and Jesus himself. He will say, Christianity is a hoax. Let Jesus be crucified. The defense attorney will speak for Christ and his church. He will try to answer the charges and to convince you to cast the vote of your heart for Christ. The trial will now get underway.
Simon, son of Jonah, will take the stand. Your name?
Simon, son of Jonah.
Your occupation?
I'm a disciple of Christ.
You mean Jesus, the carpenter's son from Nazareth?
Yes.
You said your occupation was being a disciple of Jesus. Is that really an occupation? Do you make a living at it?
I believe it's an occupation. It occupies my time, my thoughts, my energies. I believe it's a living too. I devote my entire life to it.
What salary are you paid?
I'm not paid a salary.
You mean you sponge on people?
I wouldn't call it that. I break people the bread of life, and I teach them the word of Christ. I break with them their daily bread.
You said your name is Simon. Aren't you better known as Peter?
That is the name my master gave me.
I have before me the story of how you got the name Peter. It was written by Matthew, a member of your little group. This is what he says. Jesus went to the territory near the town of Caesarea Philippi, where he asked his disciples, "Who do men say the Son of Man is?" "Some say John the Baptist," they answered. "Others say Elijah, while others say Jeremiah or some other prophet." "What about you?" he asked them. "Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." "Simon, son of Jonah, you are happy indeed," answered Jesus, "for this truth did not come to you from any human being, but it was given to you directly by my Father in heaven. And so I tell you, you are a rock, Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." Is this an accurate account of how you got the name Peter?
Yes.
The name Peter means rock, doesn't it?
Yes.
Your rabbi said he was going to build his church on you. He did say that, didn't he?
Yes.
That means, doesn't it, that he appointed you as leader of the disciples, the big wheel, the head of the church?
Well, it doesn't mean that all to me. All I can say is that I enjoy some favors. You might call them prerogatives, at least in our group.
But your rabbi did call you a rock man. Does that mean that you have an unshakable faith in God? That you have never any great doubts? That your loyalty to your rabbi is unfaltering? Well, does it?
I suppose it should. I don't know how to answer you.
I thought you were a man who always had a ready answer. Why are you suddenly speechless? Do you just happen to remember a few things that make a lie of the name your rabbi gave you?
Yes, I do remember times when I didn't live up to my name.
In fact, you acted like a coward, didn't you? Simon, you talk big, but that's as far as it ever goes. Do you remember the night when your rabbi was taken captive in the Garden of Gethsemane? Tell the jury what you did when they led him away.
I ran away.
You ran away. Mr. Rockman ran away. No matter what happened to your rabbi, you didn't want anything to happen to you. It is easy to make brave promises to your rabbi, but when the chips are down, Mr. Rockman looks out for Mr. Rockman. Am I telling it the way it was?
Yes.
Talk up so that everyone can hear you.
Yes, I was a coward.
Before all this happened, you boasted to your rabbi that you would never forsake him, that you would die for him if you had to, didn't you?
Yes.
Do you also remember how you acted when the preliminary trial of your rabbi was going on in the palace of the high priest? Not just once, but 3 times you denied, even with an oath, that you were a disciple. You lied, saying you did not know the Rabbi Jesus. You did this when some soldiers asked you about your connection with him. You did it again when a harmless little girl questioned you about it. You lied to save your skin, didn't you, Mr. Rockman?
I haven't kept my sins a secret. My master knows I am sorry, and he forgave me.
That doesn't change anything.
For me, it changes everything.
Wait until I ask you a question and then talk. I'm still looking for a reason why you should be called the Rockman. Of course there isn't any. Simon, son of Jonah, your rabbi misnamed you. He didn't build his church on a rock. He built it on a hollow shell that collapses under the slightest pressure. You may step down. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have heard the testimony of Simon, the prince of the disciples of the Rabbi Jesus, the man on whom he wants to build his church. Judging by his own testimony, what kind of man is he? He's a miserable coward, a bag of wind, a fraud. Now, what does this say about the church and about Jesus himself? Remember, Simon is not a loosely attached member of the church, of which there are many. He is Mr. Church. He typifies the church. Where in all the world could we find a man who represents the church as fairly and as authentically as does Simon? We might therefore expect to find the same fraudulence in all Christians that we have found in Simon, all of the best Christians. And we do. They too have names that are meaningless and empty. They call themselves the elect of God, his special people. But what, pray tell, is different and special about their manner of life? They call themselves saints, but they obviously don't believe it themselves, because they can begin their worship services by confessing their great sins. Equally meaningless are the promises and pledges of loyalty to their rabbi, which they make in the safety of their little church meetings. Outside, where they frighten easily, they run scared, dangle any little prize in front of their eyes, and they forget their solemn vows. People who do not have convictions cannot have the courage of their convictions. The Christians I have seen do not have convictions. All they have are meaningless dogmas and shibboleths, which they rehearse and recite in parrot-like fashion in their silly church meetings. It is Jesus who is on trial. He is the leader of the movement. He, not Peter, is really the rock on which the church is built. He is the author of all the lies. He gave Peter his name, and he gives all Christians their names. He demands of them their pledges of allegiance. The fraudulent church is his creation. So I ask you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in the name of honesty and justice, to declare Jesus guilty and to put him away. I rest my case.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my colleague established that on several occasions Peter acted like a coward. That he ran away when his master was taken captive in Gethsemane. That he denied his discipleship 3 times to save his own life. That he did all this after positively declaring that he believed Jesus to be the Messiah and that he would never forsake him. My colleague would not have had to go to all this trouble to bring these stories about Peter to our attention. You, the members of the jury, you know all these stories. The whole world knows them. You also know who told these stories to spread to the ends of the earth. Not Peter's enemies, but his friends. And Peter was the source of information. Peter gave them license and even encouragement to circulate these stories which put him in a bad light. Why does Peter want the whole world to know about his big sins? To show that Jesus was a fraud? On the contrary, he wants people to know that the love of Jesus is genuine. Peter is glad to have people know how cowardly he acted if it'll help them to learn how forgiving Jesus is. Peter wants people like us to know that no matter how tragically you fall, Jesus can rescue you. No matter how many vows of allegiance you have broken, Jesus is ready to take you back. That is the whole story of Christ's innocent suffering, of which Peter's story is a part. And that's what it's all about. It says Jesus is not only willing to forgive the great sinner, but also that he can use him in his kingdom. He might even make him a leader in the church, as he did Peter. Let's return for a moment to the subject of cowardice and bravery. We could point out some brave things that Peter actually did. We could mention persecutions he courageously suffered for Jesus' sake. And I'm sure Peter himself doesn't want me to defend him in this way. There's another kind of courage I want to talk to you about. It's moral courage. The courage to say, I did wrong when you did wrong. The courage to say, I was a coward when you were a coward. It's the courage to confess your sins to God and people and to be willing to suffer all the consequences. Peter has this courage. What a rare thing it is in our world today. Indeed, it's much rarer than physical courage, and we hasten to add more important in our daily lives. Confession of sin is the basis for all improvement and for all reconciliation. Lacking the courage to confess, man dooms himself to moral stagnancy and God-forsakenness. Where did Peter get the courage to confess his sins? No one is born with it. No one acquires it on his own. The natural thing is to excuse and justify oneself and then blame others. No one can make an honest and healthy confession of his sins without help from God. Peter got the help he needed. He got it from his master, who first tied a string on Peter's finger with his prediction about the crowing rooster, and later pierced Peter's soul with a look that he gave him. Now, what should you, the jury, do about Jesus who is on trial here tonight? Let me put it this way. If you have no sins to confess, if you have never in your life acted cowardly, if you unfailingly keep your word, then sentenced to death. You don't need him. You had better get rid of him and better off without him, because he's a nuisance to self-righteous people. But if you're a sinner, if even just sometimes you break your promises to God and men, if just once in a while you care far, far too much about saving your skin and your reputation, if, in a word, you are a frail human being, then let Jesus live to forgive you, to put you back into God's favor, and to give you some important work to do in his church. I leave the verdict to you.